is Hamlet, and welcome to the How to Spark Success series. And this is where I have conversations with savvy and successful business owners and thought leaders to find out about their career journey, and also to try and steal some of their success secrets and share it with you. So today I'm delighted to have Viv Broughton joining me. Now, Viv is the owner of the Premises Studios, which is London's leading music studio complex. And he's also author of 2 books about gospel music. But Viv has got a very interesting career journey story to share with us, because he's also been a musician and a journalist. So I'm going to pass over to you, Viv. So welcome. It's great to have you joining us.
Hi, Liz. Great to meet you.
So do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, what you're doing now, your career journey?
Well, I've had one of those, what they euphemistically call a checkered career. And I think a lot of people in business have, they've taken a very circuitous route through all kinds of things. Now, for me, I didn't really get into business until I was about over 50. So most of my life I've been involved in music or politics, and sometimes both at the same time. So political activism was where I really started out, but also playing music in lots of bands. And I learnt, I think this is one of the things that gives you a broad brush of experience, and that serves you extremely well when you come into business, because you learn so much. Like in political activism, you learn how to set goals, how to organize people, how to cope with disappointment, because one of the big things about trying to change the world is that it doesn't change very quickly, so you get very used to taking it one step at a time, and until you realize that all progress is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and the step back is when you feel down and disappointed, and you might despair, but there is always that next step forward. So it's very important to learn some of these kind of life lessons that you can only learn through experience. Now, when you come to business, and when I came to business late in life, I put all of the things that I had learned about that kind of stuff into building and launching a business. And that stood me in great stead, because, I think that one of the things in business is you have a great idea. You spark an idea, you see a gap in the market, you think you've come up with something that is really special, that's going to have an impact on the world. You've then got to realistically how you're going to put that into practice. So that was, there's a big thing about business plans. And I was urged to do a business plan when I came to do business, take over the Premises. And I didn't launch the Premises as a business. It was already in existence. It'd been here for 10 years. It had, I think, about 9 studios. We now have 24 studios. And but it was in a lot of trouble then. It was on the verge of bankruptcy, so I bought it out of bankruptcy. And I wanted a business. I didn't want to start a business from scratch. I was too old for that. I wanted to take on a business that was in trouble and turn it around, and use all the things that I'd learned in my life to apply to this. So that was, really how I came to it.
Yeah. And how do you think, obviously you've always had an interest in music, being a musician yourself, but how do you think your sort of early experiences as a musician have sort of led you to this type of business, and sort of, being so successful in expansion, and, now it's one of the, it is the leading recording studios in London. So how has that helped?
Just by learning about how people function, especially musicians. Musicians are tend to have fragile egos. They tend to be quite insecure. They tend to be over ambitious, which is good. you know, but obviously then they particularly have to cope with setbacks and disappointments. You know, they labored long and hard over a new album, for instance, and then they will launch that album expecting it to go, you know, top 5, and suddenly it doesn't do anything at all. And, you know, that's a crushing blow, you know. And I've dealt with crushing blows, you know, or just kind of general disappointments that at the time felt like the end of the world. But, you know, you realize, you put it in perspective, and over a longer period of time, it's not the end of the world. You go to your next album, and you make sure that you learn stuff from that. So it's all about learning lessons, applying them to the next step, you know. And I think that's, you know, that's just a life lesson as much as anything about business.
Amazing. And for you, what do you think, you know, I'm sure there's lots of things that have led to your success and the position you're in today, but what do you think is the biggest factor that has helped you to become successful?
Breaking the rules and taking chances. Now, there's an odd thing with an entrepreneur has to be a gambler. You're taking risks. But I am an exceedingly risk-averse person. Okay, so but I'm also, you know, I grew up as an anarchist, and I believe in kind of breaking the rules and making my own way and doing things the way I wanted to do them, you know, despite what anyone else says. I'm not very good at taking advice, so I might be okay about giving it out. I'm not very good at taking it. So, particularly with things like business plans, I have an aversion to business plans. I think you should do them. I did one for this place when I was looking to take it over, because I had to do one for the bank. 3-year business plan, definitely do the business plan, do all your income and expenditure projections, and then see whether it's going to be, see if it's going to work or not. Then go back to the business plan and reduce your income by 50%, increase your expenditure by 50%, and have a look and see, does this still work? And you'll probably find, no, it doesn't work at all. So throw the business plan away after that. Having done it, throw it away and just use your instincts and your intelligence and your experience and other people's experiences and go for it. But the gambling side of it, the gambling side is interesting and important. You do have to take risks, but you have to calculate what the risks are. You have to be very careful which risks you take. And your business and my business depended on taking risks at certain times, calculated risks, and then seeing those through. And also, even more importantly, spotting the risk not to take, so that you kind of, I mean, we almost expanded by buying another building just before lockdown. Now, I was cautious and I almost went there, but then decided not to, and I'm so glad I didn't, you know. Yeah. A lot of it's about luck. No one could have foreseen the coronavirus lockdown and the crash. But, you know, you take the calculated risks, but you're also, you're dependent on luck. Very much so, yeah.
And you're sort of keeping the place running with one other staff member and the studio cat that I love.
Yes.
Playing her own album. I saw her on the social media. Amazing.
Yeah. She's a bit disorientated at the moment. She's used to the place being filled with, we would normally have 300 people in the building, all making different kinds of music in different rooms. So you'd walk through the building and you'd hear death metal coming out of one room, a classical orchestra in another room, an indie band, you know, rap group, whatever it is. And I'm pretty sure the cat is deaf. Oh. She goes and sits in the rooms with the bands, you know.
Oh my goodness. What's her favourite type of music? Does she prefer one genre?
No, she is, she's pretty flexible about that. I don't think she has a preference. She just goes, she almost acts like a caretaker and goes around room by room. She'll spend, you know, half a day in one room, just, you know, sleeping inside the drum, inside the bass drum sometimes, you know. She must be completely deaf.
Oh, I love that. She should have her own Instagram account. I think
Yeah,
people love
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So for you, what are your success habits, you know, in every day or weekly, or, you know, what would you say your habits are for success?
Getting up early.
How early?
Oh, well, these days, not that early, but you know, 7-ish, being in the building. I mean, music is the kind of industry that isn't an early morning thing. But we are open till midnight, 7 days a week. Yeah. But I try to get in the first, after the cleaner. The cleaner comes in 7 days a week. She comes in about 5 o'clock in the morning. She does the whole building, and then I'll come in after that, and just to get a head start and make sure everything's kind of up and running, that there are no nasty surprises, like that the grand piano is in one room, but it should be in another room because we've got a classical musician coming in. So the grand piano's got to be moved, but I'm the only one there, so I can't move it by myself. I don't like those kind of surprises anymore. We've had a few of those. So, you know, you just learn from experience on grappling with the day-to-day little problems. I think that's common to all businesses, you know. I mean, our business is, although it sounds like it's show business and it's glamorous, it's actually like running a small boutique hotel for very noisy guests, right? But the actual operation of the studios is just like running a hotel. You're taking bookings, you're taking a specification. So instead of a mini bar, you've got guitar amps and drum kits ordered in. You are cleaning rooms, you're making rooms ready for people. People come in, use them for 4 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, and then you see them out. You've got to take the money, get the money, very important, obviously. So it's exactly like a hotel. And once you realize that, then you can look at the operations. Well, how do hotels work, you know, and then apply stuff back. We've been trying to look at online kind of booking systems for hotels. When we last looked at it, they weren't really up to what we needed. But I think fairly soon we'll be able to team up with a hotel booking software company and help them develop software for music studios and art studios and all kinds of things, you know. The software is easily adaptable to that.
That's really
I'm
exciting.
also, the other big thing is I'm a terrible cheapskate. So I always...
That's in the
family. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. I would always look for ways to cut corners and get things cheap, and to turn a disadvantage into an advantage. I think that's a massive thing. So when we were building this place here, there are things like studio doors. Now, there must be, I don't know how many there are, but there are probably about 75 doors in this place, and they all need to be fairly soundproofed. Now, if you go to a manufacturer of studio soundproof doors, they're £1,500 each, right? So I thought, okay, I'm not spending that. I don't have that kind of money. So I found a scrapyard that specializes in recycled materials, so reclaimed materials. And because we're quite near to the City of London, they would tend to get very high-end equipment out of banks and offices in the city, who would have paid originally £1,000 a door at least. They do a big clean out after 5 years, and these doors and windows and all kinds of other stuff end up in recycling yards. So I picked doors up for £40 each. Wow. Save a fortune. The same in the recording studio. We're building the recording studio, and we've got these huge kind of 20-foot by 15-foot windows made out of armored glass. And they came from a scrapyard, and I saw them in the scrapyard before we started building. If I'd had them made, they're in sealed steel frames. I mean, amazing. And there were two of them there. They were £120 each.
Wow.
But they would have been 5,000 each if I'd had them built. So I always looked for ways to save money. Is phenomenally important. And I think a lot of people go, you have an idea for a business and you're costing it out, and you go, okay, how much would soundproof doors be? I'd need soundproof doors. So you go online and you see quotes, and you get the quotes and you build them into your thing. But you don't need to do it that way. I mean, get inventive, think, where else can you get them? How can you adapt stuff? I'll give you an example. We're about to reopen after lockdown, and one of the biggest health risks is microphones.
Right, yeah.
So people are singing in a microphone. They're going to have a microphone right up to their mouth that someone else may have used 2 hours earlier. So obviously people are not very comfortable with that. The human voice is the greatest and the most dangerous instrument in the present circumstances, followed by trumpet and trombone. Yeah. Right? So with the human voice, how do we catch the air? Yep. That is being projected, and so the simplest thing is a piece of plastic that you can get from Ryman stationers. Yep. That is very flexible. You cut a hole in the middle of the piece of plastic. You take the cover off of the mic. You fit this on. You put the cover back on the mic. You've got a mic right in the middle of a piece of plastic, and the whole thing costs maybe £3 right, to do. Wow. But it gives you a screen that is right behind where the microphone is, and that protects the rest of the room and the rest of the band. So
yeah, you've got sort of different considerations, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you need to do. You look at ways to cut costs to the bone so you can still provide a great service. Nobody notices. When they go up to the recording studio, they're looking at this fabulous studio. They don't realize under the floor is 4 feet thick. Yeah. But it's got a subfloor of 150 old car tires.
Oh my goodness.
That are filled with recycled rock wool. Okay. So, but you don't see any of this stuff. Yeah. But it's all there and it all has a function, and you can pick stuff up cheaply.
Yeah, and I've been reading a lot about what you've been doing to sort of make the studios more green, and you've got your roof covered in solar panels. Can you just tell us a bit about sort of moving towards that more green agenda?
Well, that was a combination of two things. It came out of I suppose a lot of my political activism and my priorities personally. It also combined with my instinct to be a cheapskate and to find cheap ways of doing things. So it combined recycling and reclaimed materials. So all of the windows in the recording studio all came out of recycling. There's a fantastic circular bronze window that came out of a bank in the city. Wow. And that costs like £120. And it's a feature. And almost everyone comes in the studio goes, oh, wow, look at that circular bronze window. That looks beautiful, And imagine that it cost a fortune, but it didn't. So using reclaimed and recycled materials was a priority. It combined two things together. It was also, and this is where my kind of marketing background came in, and I spent 13 years in journalism and in marketing in newspapers and magazines. Instinct for a good story. So it's a good news story. So we got acres and acres of press publicity. BBC TV News featured it twice, main news, because it was the first solar-powered recording studio in Europe, and still is actually. Yeah. So it served several purposes, and the way that it was set up, it can deliver ultra high quality audio master recordings, but it's also got these other elements to it.
Yeah.
people love to talk about, and that's, you know, publicity, very important.
And that's, you know, really important for musicians as well, you know, particularly those, I mean, you've got great resources anyway, but, you know, particularly those that want to be recording somewhere that's green and, you know,
Yeah,
for the environment. So
yeah, sure. And we're able to shame them a bit, you know, if someone's kind of, they're talking about, you know, they're giving a lot of talk about the environment and how green they are, and say, well, yeah, where did you record your album? Abbey Road. Well, they're not very green. You've got a solar powered recording studio upstairs. Why aren't you using that? You know.
yeah, that's amazing. And then, so sort of looking back over your really interesting career and where you are now, if you could do it all over again, start all over again, what would you do differently?
I don't think I'd do anything differently, because every, I mean, it's a cliche, but every bit of thing you do in your life is something that you learn from. So it's, whatever you end up doing is a combination of all these experiences you have in life. So, and the disappointments are just as important, and the calamities and the mistakes are just as important as the successes. So I would never try to focus on the success side, focus on where things went wrong.
Yeah.
The most important thing, though, is make sure these mistakes are not fatal mistakes. So, you know, always be thinking about kind of what's the downside. So when you're weighing up the pros and cons of a step to take, you're going to gamble, you're going to, if you're an entrepreneur, if you've got those instincts, you're going to take that kind of risk.
Yeah.
But you've got to be, it's got to be a calculated risk, and it may go wrong. So be aware of that. And if it goes wrong, that's something to learn from next time. Doesn't necessarily mean that you won't take a similar risk in the future, but so you know, I've had a fantastic life, and you know, I've done 100 different things, and it just gives you so much to draw on. Even my apprenticeship at the age of 17 in Woolwich Arsenal would have been, there are things I use now, I used the other day, you know, just knowledge about kind of practical things.
Yeah.
In fact, the thing that I've just spoke about the microphone thing, that all came from a mechanical engineering background. You know, it's a kind of invention and imagination. Because now this is the other interesting thing. My business here is a combination between business and art.
Yeah.
Art is what is made inside this business, but the business side of it, but they are both products of imagination.
Yeah.
You imagine something as an entrepreneur. I could think this could work, you know, yeah. And so you imagine something, then you create it out of thin air, and you make something happen. It's the same with art. A musician thinks of a song. Think of a song. So they make it out of thin air. So there are parallels.
Yeah.
So these two come together for me in this kind of business.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, definitely. And I know, you know, I'm a musician myself, obviously not recording studio musician, but you never know sometimes.
Never know. Yeah.
And, you know, I think it is a different, it's definitely a different way of thinking. And, you know, part of when you're taught to read music, you're taught to sort of look and read ahead of what you're actually playing. And so, you know, that's quite a positive thing in business, and, you know, always sort of thinking of that next thing and ideas and, you know, looking ahead. So I think, you know, that totally marries together with the business side as well as the art. So for you, in terms of, you know, advice you've received, what would you say has been the best piece of advice about success, about sparking success that you've received?
Like I said, I'm not good at taking advice. I kind of, I'm always quite kind of skeptical. I can't think of anything in business that I've been told. I can tell you things that I've seen. Now, I worked for 13 years as marketing director of the Voice newspaper, and the Voice newspaper was the main black newspaper in this country. Now, that was founded by a guy called Val McCullough, who was a Jamaican who came out of the RAF, was living in a tower block in the East End, and I knew him. We worked on a community newspaper together. He had the idea to start the Voice. And I worked with him right from the very beginning through to, for 13 years, and we managed to get that newspaper was selling 55,000 copies a week. It had had 250,000 regular weekly readers, and it was fascinating to see at first hand an entrepreneur at work from day one all the way through, and all of the trials and tribulations that he encountered and how he dealt with them. As a black person in business, especially in the newspaper trade, he encountered huge hostility. Yeah. But he broke loads of rules and he forced his way through. And it was fascinating to watch it from the inside. It was also incredibly instructive for me personally to be like the only white person in a black-owned company. Yeah. Just to see it that from a different perspective completely. And I found that I learned most from that. And it was after that I thought, business, you can make a change. You can change the world through business just as much as you can through political activism. So when I came out of that, that's when I started looking and thinking, well, I want to get involved in a business, because I could see that you can make things happen, you can make things change that way. So it wasn't anything anybody said to me. It was watching someone else.
Yeah. Amazing. And obviously, you know, anyone that goes on the Premises website and looks at your client list, is just hundreds and hundreds of, you know, these amazing names, amazing bands, you know, solo artists. So, you know, you're rubbing up against these people every day. What would you say is your observation of sort of what makes a successful musician or band?
There is something you almost impossible to pin down that the artists have, and it's really difficult to describe what it is. There is an aura, there is a charisma about them, there is a vision, there is danger attached to them, there's all kinds of things. I remember when Nina Simone came in, she obviously had a reputation for being absolutely ferocious, and we were scared stiff because, you know, she's Nina Simone, you know. And I'd heard stories about her that there was a friend of mine who would put out some of her famous recordings. Now, it was well known that her recordings she sold off very cheaply when she was young. So all of those famous tracks of hers, My Baby Just Cares for Me, and all of those, she never gets any royalties on. And so he was doing a reissue with these tracks on. He knew she wouldn't get the money, but he wanted to do right by her. So he tracked her down in Paris, went to see her, and she wouldn't see them. She was in a hotel. So they waited in the lobby for her to come down, because they wanted to say, look, we would like to make sure you get royalties. We'll pay, even though we don't legally have to. But she's going down the stairs with a machete, chased him out of the building. So we didn't know what to expect. So she walks in. She arrives in a Rolls Royce with a white chauffeur in full uniform. She's in a wheelchair in a. She's wearing a grey mink coat from neck to ankles. Oh, wow. Got a grey mink fur hat on, huge dark glasses, and he wheels her through, and everybody's in awe of her. It's like, oh my God, it's like the Queen's arrived, you know. So it's just something that, how can you can't bottle that. You can't kind of recreate it. You know, all this stuff, singers going on The Voice and, you know, X Factor, forget that, you know, that's not where it is. You know, it's something just magical deep inside somebody.
I love that.
So we are always in awe of all the people that come through. Gladys Knight, when she came, phenomenal, you know. Just like, again, it's this kind of incredible, charismatic amazing individual, and suddenly is here. You know, lots of my idols. I'm a big jazz fan, so you know, Dave Brubeck rings up, and I took the phone call.
Oh.
You can't kind of buy those sort of experiences, you know. But I wouldn't like to say what.
Yeah.
I mean, in my youth, as a teenager, I played in a band with David Bowie. But David Bowie, you would not ever have thought that he would have been the person he became. He was kind of regarded slightly as the one who was lagging behind.
Wow.
Right? He never quite had it. He was singing in a covers band. He was the local pretty boy, you know, and so all the girls were chasing after him. But he was singing the pop hits of the day back then. You know, I forget when that was, kind of early 1960s. And there were a lot of other exciting things going on, you know, the Stones and so on. And he was a bit behind the curve. So you'd never have guessed that he would have emerged to be the person he was. So almost impossible to answer that question, even though I've talked about it for about 10 minutes.
That's the best answers. Yeah. So have you got any final words for people watching this in terms of sort of your journey or success or making lots of mistakes and learning?
I think if you've got a burning ambition, you have to go for it. But just be super careful, take the calculated risks. Don't necessarily listen to anything anybody else has said, including me. And just, you've got to make your own way, but be aware you're going to make mistakes, and be very aware that you start out with huge lorry loads of hope and optimism and confidence, and you're gonna get just beaten, you know, and you've got to learn to fall down, get up, dust yourself off, you know, and keep going. Just be single-minded, kill the opposition, you know, identify your competitor, wipe them out, you know, kill or be killed. You're in business, you know. I was celebrating this week because our greatest competitor as studios is closing in July. They're going bust. And it was, yes, finally.
We've won.
It's terrible. It's a terrible thing to say, but you know, it's absolutely the truth. I'm not going to pretend that that's really sorry. I'm really sad about that. You know, no, I'm not at all.
Oh, that's amazing. I think, you know, that piece of advice of sort of, you know, go with the journey, and there's going to be, you know, you're going to be like flattened some days, and you know,
sure.
Is true. I mean, one of my other guests, Stephen Thompson, he was saying his advice was make lots and lots and lots of mistakes in business, and you know, they will sort of build you up, and you will them. So yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Viv, it's been an absolute delight to speak to you, and some really interesting stories, and I'll be heading over to the premises and coming to meet Doris the cat soon.
Please do. She was dying to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll set up her Instagram account for her.
Yeah, fine. Okay. I think she's got one, but I don't really do Instagram, so I do believe there is one. So
yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, really interesting, and good luck for sort of the reopening as well, which is coming up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers, Liz.
And for the viewers, join me for the next episode of How to Spark Success, where I'll be speaking to Carlo Guzzi, all the way from Australia, and his area is about unleashing the power of storytelling and indirect persuasion to attract more B2B customers. So he's an amazing character, Italian background, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to him. So join me for that. And thanks for your time today. Thanks so much, Viv. It's been great to have you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.